I've been in Colorado all my life. I grew up in Colorado Springs, lived there until I came to college, and then um, in Boulder for college. So I think that I've always been around nature. Back in Colorado Springs, the house that I grew up in, it was it was like a half-mile walk away from Ute Valley Park, which is just this big open space, no buildings, not even certainly less crowded trails than we'd even see in Boulder. I'd say there's really not even really a park in Boulder that's similar to it. So I always got the opportunity. I could go for a hike whenever I wanted to. I didn't have to drive anywhere. I could just, I'd be like my parents say, "Oh, just go take the dogs for a walk," and I just go out in the middle of nature, and I was a half mile away from all that. I could go ride my bike places, and then at the same time, I also camped a lot up in the mountains and Winter Park, Silvis, a lot of different places we camped that are up in the mountains. So I think just being around the Colorado culture has shaped my view of nature quite a bit, and definitely shaped my appreciation of it. Near Rocky Mountain National Park, you're just surrounded by mountains and fully in nature. There was no Wi-Fi at the ranch, or well, I guess there was. It was very poor though. There was no cell service unless you drove 10 or 15 miles into town. And I really felt immersed in nature for those 3 months. It was definitely weird coming back to Boulder in August after having been in the mountains that whole time, since it's quite a bit different. I think nature makes people very different, and I think that not being around some of the having your phone and computer and all that at all times, it changes the way that you interact with people, and I think that it was good getting to be able to be away from my phone and computer all the time. I don't know, it was nice to just be able to walk outside, and I'm in the middle of the mountains at 9,000 feet, and beautiful scenery everywhere. There's not a lot of people, there's not buildings, there's not pollution, there's you can see the stars really, really well. So there's a lot of positives. At the same time though, being with those people and not having those connections to the outside world, it's easy to become immersed with the dramas of that little group that are kind of inconsequential. So there's positives and negatives, but on the whole, I'd say it's positive. There's a lot of people in the middle of cities. When you go into nature, you expect that you're not going to be around as many people. Obviously, living in Boulder, if you go to Chautauqua or Flagstaff, you're going to see a decent amount of people on your hike or run or bike ride or wherever. But I think that you're certainly not around cars. You're not around as many people. And I think that it's a lot of times it's somewhat dissatisfying when you do go out in nature and there's a bunch of people. You go for a hike in Colorado, there's a ton of people out on the trail today. There's too many people out. Because you don't really have the privacy. I guess maybe not privacy, but sanctitude of nature. I think my biggest fear with nature is that it's going to disappear, because I think that you look around, our population is expanding and our cities are also expanding. We're building more buildings, and cities are becoming bigger, and I think that's I think that's a really big threat to nature. But at the same time, I think that I was hiking a 14er one time. I was up there and I was thinking wow, this is great, because on top of that 14, that's a place that nobody's ever going to be able to build anything on. That's not something where you can just make a city on top of a mountain. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm thankful living in Colorado, because there's so many places where you just I'm sure you could develop up to a point, but there's always going to be places where we have nature somewhere. But also I think I don't like that it's becoming smaller and smaller, those areas that we do have the nature.
Yep.
That certain cultures certainly do have different interactions with nature. I think that just within the United States, you can see a gigantic contrast between Native American cultures that are very tribal and historically valued very heavily, leaving nature at peace. Obviously, they hunted and and did stuff like that, but it was never at an unsustainable level. I would argue. And then in contrast, we have people on the other side of it that place a very low value on nature, like some of the climate change deniers, and the people that view making money is more important than being in nature. I think that you can have both. I don't think it needs to be one way or the other, but I think that our culture certainly does. I think it does heavily influence like how we treat nature and our perceptions of nature and the value that we put on it.